Yeah.
there's a thread that's connected to the mindset set shift. Um, when you mentioned getting the first laundromat, you mentioned the lady that wasn't able to carry the quarters, so she
Mhm.
didn't, she didn't go find somebody who could carry quarters. She went and sold the laundromat, and I think that's part of that mindset where the lack of opportunity is part of that mindset, and
Hmm.
I'm wondering, like, how do you expand on when you're starting out, you start by like doing most of the work yourself, but then as you start to expand, that becomes not even close to an option. And so how do you find ways to think outside the box of somebody else could do this, basically?
Yeah, and to me, that's kind of like the biggest disconnect or the biggest failing in society that we've got now is connecting those two. How I am at this point in life. How do I get to the other point in life? And as I grow in my business, I find out that networking plays such a huge aspect of that.
Right.
But then it's a how do you get to that point where you're used to networking and you understand it? That's why I like social media, because with social media and the internet, we have this ability that's never existed before in the world. We can connect to everybody else. I mean, I've never met either of you before in person, and it's a possibility we will never ever meet together. And in that aspect, it's like, oh, this is still a game changer. This still gives us just this unbelievable power to communicate with people, to network with people, and to collaborate and work together in the hopes of achieving something better or beyond us as individual people. And I think that once people understand that, and if they if the normal person can get that through their head, and then they start working on the thought of, okay, so how do I use this for my benefit, then it starts this just unbelievable internal process, so
Yes.
that now you can start working on the pieces together, because you don't know what you don't know, till you're kind of self-aware that that's a thing, that's an issue.
Yes,
So
and that's kind of what I wanted to dig for, was the idea of, I mean, if you're in a scenario where you, to use the analogy, can't carry quarters,
mhm,
y- your mind asks a different question.
mhm.
And I'm curious, what are those questions when you run across the thing that you can't carry? What's the first thing that pops to mind for you?
If it's a physical thing or a
Like
like
the
mental
analogy
thing.
of like, oh, this is a job that I can't handle, but it needs to get done.
What should happen is I should immediately say, "Oh, I can find this resource. I can develop a resource to do it."
Mm,
My
yeah.
biggest struggle right now is I look at it and say, "Oh, I will go take care of this."
Yes,
And
I do the same.
yeah, I lose so much money on that. It's just
Right.
astronomical.
Yeah, I've
Astronomical.
been working with a bunch of folks, and that seems to be the most common thing that we're all dealing with, is across the board we're coming to a problem, and we're trying to solve it ourselves. And it's funny because I think it makes perfect sense, because the thing that gets us to a certain level of success is we take on responsibility. We choose to
Mhm,
take on responsibility for something. We look at the world and we go, okay, I'll do that. And then we hit a measure of success, and then our reward system register. Oh, look, I have taken on a piece of responsibility. I've taken on a task, and I've gotten success. So
mhm.
now it becomes sort of our gut reaction to take on the task, because that's what gets us where we want to go according to our
Yeah.
reward systems. But what
Mhm.
gets you to one level doesn't get you to the next level.
Yeah, and it's my buddy Sean, he says I do a lot of minimum wage tasks, and
Ah,
I am not a minimum wage guy. And it's one of these things where he has found himself, he's spending 10 hours a week driving a person that currently has a DUI on his record. He doesn't possess
Right.
a driver's license, and he's driving him around town 10 hours a week. And I said, couldn't you just Uber? And he said to me, oh, that's a good idea. I never thought of that. And I said, really? You're just as smart as I am. You own 80 rentals in a hotel.
Yeah.
Right.
Your time your time investment in on this is probably not that great. Your return on your time is probably not that effective right now. And he said, I know, but it's what I say all the time. I know, but I gotta get it done.
Yeah.
And I find myself, my biggest struggle and my biggest failing right now is I'm spending such little time at fixing the endemic problems within what I do. And it's just like, I'm trying to buy time. If I can buy some more time, then I can fix my internal processes and really start to address the bigger issues at play. And yesterday I signed over 40 rentals to a management company, which I'm really excited about. And it's like,
Congrats.
okay, I'm quantifying some of my time. I am spending some money here to buy some time. And I know that it's one of the 9-figure net worth guys that I know. He has 350 rentals right outside Los Angeles. And, I talk about, I have 140 rentals in Ohio. And it's like where you are in Indiana.
Yeah.
Those properties tend not to be worth a whole lot of money. But he's in Western San Bernardino County. And the value of his rentals are a little bit bigger than mine. And he said, outsource every single thing you do right now. And he's been saying this to me for 4 years. He said, you'll be happier, you'll make more money, you'll be less stressed, and you'll just get so much more work done. And it's taken me, 2 years here to finally get to the point. I can't do this anymore. Even I don't like your business process the most, but here it goes. I've tried training managers, and it's just crazy.
I think time management is definitely the mind killer of an entrepreneur. And it's because, when you start off, like, let's say you're an entrepreneur who wasn't in a fortunate position to become that entrepreneur, right? So you started off from a, middle to lower class family and you work your way up. The problem is you're working every single day and you find very quickly that doing it yourself, learning it yourself is the fastest way to get things done when you start. And that becomes your motivation. That's your entire driving force is you. I'm doing this because I need to get it done. Then you get to the point that we're talking about, scalability. And you're still in that mentality and you're trying to have your hands on everything. And eventually you have to realize I have to let it go. I have to give it to someone else. And that's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying.
It's I think one of the elements that makes it the most difficult is your intuition that you can do it better is correct. Because you've been training to solve these problems for a long time, and your survival was based in solving these problems. So you are the best at it, which means that to pass it off to someone is to, it's not just a sacrifice of the ego, it's a sacrifice of the task itself to some degree. Because at least at the beginning, it will not be at the same quality level. Can I ask a backstory question? I want to know, is there something that got you interested in money, or did you feel like you were always wired to enjoy the process of investment and building business and things like that?
So for me, so much of it was the desire to just be able to afford things. That has been just an overwhelming thing. The first business that my brother and I started was a paintball business. And the only reason we started the paintball business was so that we could actually afford to play. Because paintball was, and still to a very large extent, is a very expensive thing. And it was just, let's start a business so we can actually afford to do this thing. Otherwise, we won't be able to do it. And then our first paintball business evolved into this, we're making some pretty good money. And it's one of the things I've mentioned to people. It's why I feel like people need to have a business mindset in everything they do, which I think is a huge thing that people need to develop. But then you need to go on and you need to learn basic business skills, because I can go back and look at the business that my brother and I ran back in the year 2000, 2001, 2002. And I look at it and I'm like, there were segments of that business that I was involved in at 16 years old that was making $40 to $50 an hour. And as a 35-year-old entrepreneur, I'm like, holy crap, I was making $50 an hour as a teenager doing the business. But the problem was, at that point in my life, I didn't know anybody else in business. I didn't know what questions to ask. It's one of those things, like I've said, you don't know what you don't know. And we were doing with this one segment, and what we were doing was we were buying paintball equipment wholesale from a large distribution company. And the second it came in, we were flipping it on eBay. And for some reason, that's something that a lot of people didn't know to do. And so there were products that we could buy as many as we wanted for $20, and we could resell them on eBay for 30 to 40. And we could have moved probably $10,000 a week in volume on that, but we were not quantifying anything. We had no clue how to do basic accounting. We had no idea that a spreadsheet existed. And we had, I had Excel on that computer. I never spent the time on figuring out how. One, I didn't know how to use it. Number two, I saw no purpose for it. And I go back and I'm like, we were making $40, $50 an hour in that segment of the business. Then we were spending other time on this segment of the business, and we were making $2 an hour. But when it came to time allocation, we were spending all the time, or at least most of the time, on the thing that made us no money because it seemed like it would be profitable. It was fun. But the thing that was making us money, that was paying the bills, was not getting the proper time allocation. And I know that as time goes on, I've got a lot more effective at that. One example I have in my real estate business is 2 years in, I started looking at our financial diagnostics, and I realized that I was getting cheated on utilities. And then inside the business, I set up a plan and a procedure to fix the utility issuance problem. Just like that, $15,000 I saved the business every year from that point on. And it was, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. $15,000 I saved. And then there's these other things that I've implemented in the business as a process, and it has saved a lot of money, and I've made the money. And it's just reviewing profit and loss statements on a monthly basis, looking at my top expenses. Is there a way to make this process more efficient? Is there a problem here, or is this a justifiable expense that it just is what it is? And there's things like debt service. I can't get around the mortgages that I have if I want to acquire real estate at the pace I have. But when it comes to things like utilities, I can look at that. When it comes to maintenance expenses, I can look at that. Materials, I can look at that. Labor, I can look at. There's things that I can look at. Insurance, I can call insurance companies. I can get better bids, and then I can look and financially, I can mathematically quantify that. But those are all things that I had to learn, and I kind of reflect on the teenage business that I did way back in the day and failed at. At least I learned some lessons there.